Welcome to the Obvious Leadership Podcast, where we dive into practical leadership insights that are, well, obvious. Your hosts have walked the talk, and now they're sharing their knowledge, strategies, and advice. Let's jump into today's episode and explore the world of leadership with your hosts, Joey and Omar.
So how we doing today?
Oh man, doing good, man. Doing good. I got some nice sleep last night after that weather blew through, man.
Tell me about it. Like kids were looking out the window at the lightning.
Yeah, we were over there for like 20 minutes, man.
Yeah, it literally came out of nowhere, man. I was like, it's supposed to be hot as hell the entire week.
Yeah, it's nice to get something to cool us down a little bit, man. I was excited.
It's Texas, bro. It's Houston. It ain't gonna cool us down. It's just gonna create that humidity. We're already looking at like heat index of like 120, knowing today it's going to be like 140.
Well, that brings out the mosquitoes, man. Jeez.
For real, right? Actually, has nothing to do with those guys. But there is this thing. It's I think like called Spartan mosquito. I actually buy it for myself. I didn't even know about it until I saw it at the house I bought. And it's these like tube-like things that you hang. And like 4 of them can cover an acre, right? So if you're under an acre, obviously you can use less. But you put them on like opposite ends of the house, right? So on the other like opposite fences. And it's supposed to essentially disseminate the mosquito population. I think it's like it tries to get them to, because it's like still water, it tries to get them to lay the eggs inside of there and it just kills them. Right?
What? Okay.
But if you do that, I guarantee you, hey, Spartan guys, if you're out there and you want to, promote us, right? Or you want us to advertise your stuff, we'll do it.
Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah, it actually works.
Yeah.
And it's like $25 for 2 tubes.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
and it hangs. So you don't have to worry about like pesticides or anything like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, but yeah. I was surprised. The next thing we're gonna try is that the penny in the bag. I don't know if you've seen it like the Rudy's barbecues places and all that, or like it's supposed to work, but we'll see for flies. Right?
Yeah, we'll see.
But all right. Anything you want to cover before we start jumping into today's topic?
No, man. I know we talked a little bit about what we want to talk about. So time management. Let's keep on track.
Yeah, no, and like that's an important thing, right? We can literally do episode on episode on episode on time management. But I think today, let's really focus on a couple of things, right? As a leader, when it comes to time management, there's a couple of things that you really need to understand. For me, and Joey, intersect on what you think. But the top 2 that I think for time management, especially for a new leader to truly understand, are 2 parts. The first, you need to time manage your admin time and understand when and when not to do admin stuff. And 2, when it comes to coaching your employees, you need to manage that time and actually schedule it in and try not to do like a off the cuff or, ad hoc trainings. Nothing wrong with that. But you should have like a kind of rhythm where your team knows, all right, we're going to do this as well during this time. So either let me have a really good thing to talk about, or let me be in the middle of an interaction so somebody can, kind of observe, or whatever the case is, right? But those are the 2 biggest ones for leaders, and especially if you're in an organization that doesn't have a lot of resources. Say you're a newer company, you're a smaller company, and you don't have different departments. It falls on you as the leader to do a lot of this stuff. When I say admin, I'm not talking about just like regular paperwork. I'm not talking about payroll. Think of inventory. Think of like supplies needed. all those little things should be taken care of before like traffic hours, before your busiest days, right? None of that admin stuff should be very important like mid-afternoon on a Friday or Saturday if you're retail, right? Those are arguably your two biggest days of the week, and you should be focusing in on sales, definitely not admin or pulling people in for a freaking meeting midday on a Friday, or towards the afternoon hours when traffic is about to start building up, right?
Yeah, well, I think like what you're referencing to, like a lot of that admin stuff is, kind of like back office operations that need to
Yep.
get done to help the efficiency of the business, right?
Yeah.
To make sure things are accurate, to make sure that things are running the way that they should. And I think that goes back to the whole thing. If you're not preparing, you're repairing, right? So you know what I mean? Like if you're not preparing for that stuff and you're not planning it out, it's going to get ahead of you, and you're not going to be able to get to the things that you want to do because you're always putting out fires, right?
Oh yeah.
And you don't want to be doing that, because then if you're putting out fires, you can't focus on the things that you need to be doing consistently, which is sometimes being with your employees at certain times of the day.
Yeah, I mean, helping drive sales, all that stuff. Instead, you're in the middle of doing some kind of paperwork. And it's even worse when you pull your team into it, because there's a psychology behind this, right? There's stuff that actually goes up here when you start pulling people out of a sales mindset to focus on admin stuff, trying to take care of like any kind of fire that pops up and doing fire drills in the middle of a busy sales day, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's always roadblocks, right? There's always
Yeah.
roadblocks in somebody's mind, right? And if you don't clear those roadblocks, they're not going to be the best salesperson that they can be, because they're always worried about this thing that may pop up, or this thing that I'm not sure how to handle, or this thing that, like that really gets under my skin anytime I'm trying to do a sale, right? It's always popping up. So, if you, as a leader, if you're not taking care of those things and making time to do those things, then they're not going to be as efficient as they can be.
Oh yeah. And like as a leader, it's not just the sales that you make on the front, it's also ensuring that stuff sticks on the back end, right? Last thing you want is to have something completely sold, go into the back, because your system is showing that you have these items in, and you've already committed to the client that you have this stuff in. Go to the back to grab this, or call the warehouse, tell them that, yeah, set it aside, only to find out, yeah, inventory's wrong. We don't have any of that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Like,
that's
yeah.
that's the worst feeling in the way in the world, man. Because you work so hard to make a recommendation of something that you think is there, and it's not there, right? So you let the salesperson down, you let the customer down, the client down, and you miss out on so many opportunities to make that a good interaction. Because then you got to go back and you got to make a recommendation against all these things that you were talking about, right? Or
Yeah.
you have to break it to them and say, hey, we can get one shipped in for you, and this is how long it's going to be, or maybe we don't know how long it's going to be, right?
Okay.
So, it's important on in all aspects to make sure that your systems are right.
Yep.
If we're talking about inventory, you have to do the things that make your business operate smoothly. You have to set aside time for that.
Yeah, you got to. And it's not just to ensure you have the inventory, but also the aged inventory. For you guys that are new leaders, business owners, I know you guys understand this part. Most of the stuff that you buy as a business, you typically get on net terms. You're not paying for it up front, you're paying for it in the arrears. It could be 30, 60, 90, sometimes even longer, depending on what kind of volume you produce and what kind of relationship you have with the manufacturer and the different vendors, right?
Right.
And it's super important to ensure that you have all the stuff caught up, so that if you have aged inventory that's about to hit that net term, you can either send it back to be able to get credit towards something else, right? Or know that, hey guys, we need to get this moved as soon as possible because it's aging, right? Because as a vendor, if that stuff gets returned and we're past that period, or as a seller, I'm sorry, and that stuff gets returned, like that falls on us because I can't send that back in to the manufacturer or the vendor that I bought it from. So that starts becoming even more important because it starts hitting the bottom line in a very different and very real monetary way. Right? But having all that, oh, go ahead, Joy.
Yeah. So what I was gonna say, man, is like I hear you saying this, and man, like one of the things that I have a problem with is staying on track and making sure that I'm meeting those deadlines, right?
Yeah.
But I was always the first person to identify who's good at that on my team and kind of make that their second responsibility. You know what I mean?
Yep.
To get help with this. Hey, like, hey, look, at this time on every day this week, we're going to go through the inventory so that we can keep on track. You know what I mean? And kind of use them as my crutch to help get these things done. But honestly, like I said, if they're good at it, they enjoy doing it, and that's part of knowing your team.
Yeah, very true. And then having like the right frame of mind and doing things in the right time, right, during the day, impacts the way your performance is throughout the day. Right? Imagine knocking out all the admin paperwork stuff before midday, right? Most places early on in the morning, you're not very busy, right?
Yep.
So you can hash that out, get all that stuff taken care of so that you can focus on, deliveries and delivering sales and performance the rest of the day. Spending time with your employees, coaching, training, developing, instead of, oh, snaps, it's 4 o'clock and we still haven't finished this paperwork. Like you got to set deadlines for yourself throughout the day to have some urgency to make sure this stuff gets taken care of instead of pushing it on to the next day, because then that's a snowball effect. And those little things that you didn't do, all of a sudden you need to get taken care of. It's the end of the week, and where you should be focusing on sales, now you're stuck trying to take care of all this admin stuff that you could have knocked out in no time the previous days.
Yeah, well, like, so you got to be careful with the morning as well, though, because a lot of times when a business opens, you might have an upset client that's coming in, right, to take care of an issue, and sometimes you need to be there for support. The other thing is sometimes you might have that person that wants to buy something that's ready to buy, that's walking in that door, a minute before you open, right? And that's the thing that a lot of businesses need to understand is like, yeah, you may open at a certain time, but how nice would it be for you to open 5 minutes every day to be there for your clients that are waiting there for you, right? They come and they tug on that door a minute before you open, and it opens, right? And people are there ready to get things done. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that all kind of boils down to planning. You know what I mean? You have to be there, be ready for those situations, and then after your morning rush gets good and it's gone, then then you can settle down and take care of those things that you need to do on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly basis, right? Make sure you have those things planned out.
Oh yeah. I know what I used to do. I used to do this for myself, and I had my managers do this when I was covering an area. I would come in about an hour earlier, right? 30 minutes to an hour earlier, depending on what I knew needed to get done, right? That way I had that time before the location actually opened to knock out the simple admin stuff that I needed to get knocked out, whether it was a quick inventory count, and depending on what kind of inventory count, right? Because I used to do, the company I was with, we used to do monthly and quarterly inventory counts. And the monthly ones were pretty fast. It was the quarterly ones that sucked because that one was, I had to do all the freaking accessories and everything else. Where the monthly was more the big ticket items, right?
Yeah.
That was a lot less. So that went through super fast. But on like the quarterly ones, I knew I had to schedule myself like at least 2 hours for that day to be able to knock that out. And I still needed the assistance of somebody else to be able to help out to ensure everything was going smoothly. Because the last thing you wanted to do is you're scanning things in, only to realize like, oh snap, this stopped scanning in like 50 items ago.
Yeah. Right. Well, I mean, like doing and talking about all that stuff, like I hate to play the devil's advocate here, right? But like let's say you come in, you got to do that inventory, right?
Yeah.
And you got a note on your desk like so and so has an account. It needs a lot of attention. Somebody needs to call corporate and get this taken care of, because the account's severely messed up, right? We need to take care of this because the customer is going to be in first thing in the morning and wants to know that it's resolved, right? We've all ran into those situations. So, like a lot of times you may have something planned, but there's some things that pop up that may take priority over doing those things, right? Then the plan should be, well, how am I going to get this done throughout the day? Who am I going to involve to get these things done, to make sure that you satisfy the customer and you satisfy the admin things that you need to get done.
Yep. So like in a case like that, what I actually have done, I would have literally called the customer, because once you've been enrolled, you have a better idea of how things run, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, they could have came in towards the end of business the day before,
Yeah.
and for a fact, none of that's going to get handled, and it's going to take some time. So unless the customer is going to come in and sit their happy ass on the couch or on the chair for a few hours while this gets handled,
right?
Like you can call the customer and let them know, like, hey, I received a note saying that you need some assistance. This is what I understand, right? Especially if that employee is either off or they're not coming in till later. This is where I understand the situation. Am I on the right path? Yes. Okay. What would you like done? Or what would you like to see happen? That way I have an understanding of what we can do when I'm calling in to try to get this resolved for us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And once you open up the line of communication, they're going to be happy because then they don't feel like, oh man, I'm wasting half a day coming into this location, right, without knowing it because I got other stuff to do.
Yeah.
And they know that somebody's on top of it. So that gives you the opportunity, because oftentimes you're not going to be on the phone the entire time. You're going to have to reach out. Maybe some research has to get done and they'll get back to you. Or you can put it on a headset while you get all the other stuff taken care of so that you're not bogged down by this one individual. Right. And that's what I mean. Like you got to, as a leader, you want to make sure that you have like almost like an agenda and you know how to prioritize what needs to get done. Because stuff like an item like that, they could be upset. Yeah. And it's nice to have the heads up, because I've been in this situation where the customer just or the employee just tells the customer, the manager will be here in the morning, and you get no heads up and you're in the middle of doing something and they come. And in those cases, I've done the same thing. I was like, all right, this is what I can do. I can start calling in right now and try to, get a resolution. Based on experience in the past, it's not going to be a simple 5-minute call. So do you want to stay here for the next few hours? Or would you like me to reach back out to you once I have like a response back from my support team or whatever the case is? Right. Yeah. And then at that point, they're a little bit happier. I mean, they're upset because they drove there, but at the same time, you got to make them understand, like, hey, I didn't even know you were coming in. I'll have a coaching with my employee on that. Right.
Yeah, it's all about expectations. I mean, the customer wasn't relayed the proper expectation, of how to get this situation handled. We don't have gremlins working overnight to get these things fixed. You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Making sure you call and set that expectation. Hopefully you get a hold of them and they don't come in. But when they do come in, right, or if you don't get a hold of them, you better be doing that inventory so you can be ready when they do come in to let them know, hey, look, you don't have to hang out here all day. That's not going to speed up the process. I'm going to use my resources and get this done for you, get this fixed for you. But you don't have to sit here, half day to get an answer on what we're trying to fix. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that kind of leads to the other part of the time management, right? The spending time to like help coach, train, and develop your team. Because like in a situation like that, oftentimes your team members can be trained enough and developed enough to be able to handle that on their own without it needing to pass on to like a leader, unless it's like a really messed up situation and the customer is like really, really upset. Which in a perfect world would never happen. In a realistic world, it's not going to happen very often unless your operations are bad or your company just sucks.
Right.
But if you help your team understand that, hey, if you help take care of a client or a customer that's got an issue, the likelihood that they're going to come back to you is going to be a lot greater, or the likelihood that they're going to feel happy about the situation, regardless of the results, right? Knowing that you did the most that you could do is actually going to go a long way. And you can now get potential business from that person, either directly or through referrals, because you help go that extra mile to take care of them. And I used to do that like with my teams. I would not like to turn away business in that respect. If they came in with, an issue, I would explain to them, like, don't just brush off the customer and be like, oh, we can't handle that. You got to go ask a little bit more information. Even if we can't handle it in-house at all and they need to do it themselves, ask a little bit more information, look up the account, see, what can be done, if anything can be done, right? The fact that you are trying, even if you can't do it, the fact that you tried in the eyes of the customer goes a long way than being brushed off.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I mean, also, it empowers your employees to, take hold of the situation, right? And that's kind of, along the lines of setting them up for, taking on a leadership role, right?
Yeah.
And honestly, like sometimes people don't want to take the responsibility for I think two reasons, right? And I'm just making this up as I'm going, but I'm thinking like they don't want to take responsibility because they want the manager to do it because they have the impression that the manager is not doing anything, right?
Yeah.
Or it might be that they don't know how to handle the situation, right? I feel like and maybe part of the first one is that maybe just they feel like quote unquote they don't get paid enough, right? But honestly, like you're saying, sometimes you can take that issue, turn it into a success for the customer, develop a relationship, and get those referrals, right?
Yeah.
Use it as a way when that customer is down, you took care of them, right? And you got to make sure that you take care of that situation and then move forward to where, hey, look, I'm going to gain some more of your business, and I think that's an awesome way to look at it because it's a plus for everybody involved.
Oh yeah, huge. And like to your point, right? As far as like people feeling empowered and wanting to take on the roles, you've heard me say this before. My job, my expectation is that my employees can replace me. And I don't say that in a bad way. As a leader, I welcome that. I'm not scared of that because that means that I'm training future leaders to be able to take on actual roles and needs that we're going to have in the organization.
Right.
And I'm giving my team a reason to want to stick around for the long term, right?
Mm-hmm.
And once they start seeing that and feeling it, that's a very big difference in the way they perceive the company, the way they perceive themselves inside of the organization. Because if they like, yeah, I can never grow within the organization, the likelihood that they're going to bounce to somewhere else that's going to have some kind of fruitful tenure in the future is going to be a lot higher. All right.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's be honest. People sometimes when people are hired, they're like, "Oh, I was hired as a salesperson, not as a service person to fix issues," right? so it's all about, curbing that mentality to ensure them, like, "Hey, look, you can go anywhere in this company and sell, right? But what I'm teaching you are valuable lessons to take care of certain situations that actually may be beneficial, more beneficial than a customer just coming in and asking questions about a new account or whatever it is, right? So." You got to take every interaction and try to get the most out of it. And I think that is a little bit more in depth than, like you have to explain to the employee, like, hey, look, I'm giving you something that, not maybe not, you won't get everywhere else. Right. You got to hopefully take that information and translate it to, every interaction and, hopefully it'll lead you to success.
Yep. And that goes back to like as a leader, managing your time to know when to do it. So like if you split up your day in a simple like thirds, right? First part of the day and the first third first third of the day, you focus on your admin stuff, get all that knocked out.
Yeah.
This 2/3 of the rest of the day that you have, you can focus on two things. You could focus on observations and you can focus on one-on-ones. But as a leader, you need to understand when your busy times are with clientele coming in so that you're not doing it in reverse. And what I mean by that, you don't want to spend your dead time scheduled for observations when statistically speaking, your team probably isn't going to run into anybody or many individuals during this period. And then when you're going to do your coaching, your training, development portion where you're going to pull them aside, maybe have a one-on-one, you schedule that during like the busier time of the day, and now you're screwed because you can't even get to that because you're busy, they're busy, right? Oftentimes, and for a lot of you guys watching, you probably know this. For a lot of smaller operations, we're talking about you being a selling manager as well, meaning that you spend your time on the sales floor, not just taking care of your team, but also helping out with clients and customers coming in, right? Yep. So ensuring that you schedule yourself for success, essentially, right? You're setting yourself up for success instead of failure, because you should have an idea, and it's not going to be right away, right? If you're new to the role, if you're new to leadership or new to that location, you got to figure out what days and times are going to be a little bit better and a little bit better than others. That way you can schedule appropriately.
Well, like one thing that's been running through my head, and it's a little bit off topic, man, but I know we talked about role plays as well, but role plays can also be a form of observations, right? I mean, I think a lot of times people don't see them like that, but that's a form of coaching, and that's if it's an actual role play going through an actual scenario, and y'all actually gain some ground, learning from that interaction. I think that can be documented as an observation, so don't downplay the role plays.
No, and never downplay the role plays. Think of it, if you played sports, guys, think of it this way. That is literally your training, whether in the off season or when in season, not playing in games. That's your role plays is when you go to train so that you're ready for game day. And game day for us is when we're in front of a customer or on the phone with a customer. That is game day for us because we got to be ready to go. Not, oh, snaps, this is when I practice when I'm in the middle of an interaction with somebody.
Yeah. So what I was gonna say, man, it's just like doing a scrimmage, right?
Yeah.
So it's just like doing a scrimmage. Like, so these guys could be like, let's two scenarios, right? There's this person that is just lifting weights constantly, right? And they've never done a scrimmage, but then they get out on game day and you're throwing them these signs and they're like, I'm throwing a sign too. Right? I'm just going to run out there and catch the ball or whatever it is, right? That person's going to be running around, not in sync with everybody else. And that's the importance of role play, right? You can sit there and you can be the smartest person on the books when it comes to how your company wants you to handle something. But if you haven't actually put it into play and kind of adapted what you need to be doing, with that client at that certain time in real life, then, you're not going to be successful. You got to do those role plays, man.
Yeah. And guys, don't be a dick when you're doing role plays. And you know exactly what I mean. Don't be like the toughest person this person's ever going to run into. Like, be real. Like, and what I tell my team is like, okay, I would ask the person I was doing a role play with, what are some of the things you struggle with when you're interacting with a customer? Right? What are maybe some of the top objections you hear? Right? What are the ones that come to mind? Write it down. Give me top 3. I'm not going to do all 3. I'm going to pick one, and we're going to practice on ways to overcome that. Because here's the thing. I don't want you spinning your wheels on somebody that's not going to be buying. I want you to be able to get through the crutch, get to the core. And if they're not here to buy, cool. Maybe we can sign them up to be, contacted in the future about something else, or they can reach back out once they're ready. But I want you to get to the person that is going to want to actually spend some time and money with us, right?
Yeah.
And that's who you should be really trying to get to. Once again, goes back to my favorite quote, 60% of the time it works every time, right? It gives you that edge. Now, instead of like spinning your wheels on somebody and 3 other people are waiting, cool. This person doesn't really need anything important. It's not something that we really have here. It's outside of our wheelhouse. Unfortunately, boom, be able to get that. If it's something that we can sign them up for, maybe they're ready in 6 months or 12 months to be able to buy whatever they're looking for, right? Let me grab your information. I'll be in contact with you once we get a little bit closer, or, reach back out to me once you're a little bit actually closer to doing the project that you're wanting to, right?
Yeah.
Whereas this other person, I'm actually ready to do it now. Cool. you can get to that a lot faster if you know how to overcome and get to ask the right questions, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's super important, man. And the other thing that you can't forget when you're doing a role play is sometimes you don't have to be the client, right? Sometimes maybe you take on the role as the employee, right? And let the employee be the customer, right? Because,
Yeah,
let's face it, they see more customers than you do, and so they can give you real life situations. Now that does put them in control of, how that interaction is going to go. But,
exactly.
it needs to be, like if they give you something that isn't real life or that isn't, I guess feasible, right? Then overcome it, like pull them back into the interaction. Because, sometimes some people want to test you, and that's okay. And sometimes customers want to test you, you know what I mean? So give them that ability.
Yeah, and that's once again leading by example, right?
Yeah.
Start off the role play exactly like you're saying it, where instead of them being in the hot seat, you're in the hot seat, showing them that hey, it's okay, right? And if it's something that's completely stumped, like cool, they need to understand that even as a leader, you acknowledge that not every scenario is winnable. You're
Yeah.
not going to get a yes every single time, but we got to push through the no's to get to the yes. And the best thing that your team can understand is that one, when somebody says no, they're not saying no to you as a person, right? It's an old cliche, but it is so true because a lot of people, we as individuals, we're social creatures. We do not like hearing no. We like to be agreeable. We like all this stuff, right?
Yep.
But you have to get that almost like tough skin to be okay and understand that when they say no, they're not saying no to you. They're
Yep.
saying no at this time because this isn't a fit for them. So cool. Let me move on to the next person that is going to be a yes. And every single no you get gets you that much closer to a yes.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's the important thing. And if you can start planting the seeds as well, that means that no at this point may come back later. And even more so, if you can grab their information to be able to stay in contact with them, that can turn into a yes in the future. And now you have future business.
Right. Right.
But
Yeah. So the way I like to position it is somebody's saying no to you, they didn't see value in what you're having to offer, right?
yeah,
And but if you didn't build up that value, and you're right by saying, get their contact information, even if they said no, right? Maybe you can rethink the situation, have a conversation with your leader, right? And you can say, hey, look, I was talking to this person about this, and this, and maybe I can come up with an idea to follow up with that person and say, hey, maybe I missed a couple points of the benefits of that, that you may be missing out on, you know, and there goes your sales pitch, right? And your
yep,
follow-ups, for that person that didn't want to buy at that time. So I definitely think it's important to, just make sure that you take those no's, analyze it, but empower your people to do that. You know what I mean? Like, don't just let them go and walk out the door and never talk to them again. Like, analyze that situation, take that person as like, hey man, if you're really trying to give that product or service or whatever it is to them, and you thought that they can benefit from it and they just said no, like, do what's best for the customer. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
get contact information, follow up.
Yeah. And guys, right, going back to, to managing your time appropriately, like this whole falls into that. And here's the thing, there is no one magic bullet for every single person on what schedule is going to be right to be able to manage your time. You as the individual have to decide what's going to work best for my environment, for my industry, for the schedule that you work, right? Maybe you're in a maybe slightly larger organization and you're not the opening leader, you might be the closing leader. So obviously you may not be able to get admin stuff done right as soon as you walk in because you're expected to do other stuff. So understanding that and being able to create essentially a schedule that works for you. You don't have to have it down pat on paper, but I will say this, if you write it down, the likelihood of you doing it is going to be higher. And if you share that information with other individuals, with your leaders, your peers, it's even more so because now you're psychologically holding yourself accountable to what you're telling people you're going to do. And you're not going to stick to that schedule 100% of the time. Just like you mentioned, Joy, there are going to be curveballs that get thrown in your day. but then at least, I've delegated this time to do this, this, and this. I'm going to do as much as I can. And then what I can't, okay, I got to move to the next day because I also got to get to this stuff that needs to get done today.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I think it kind of boils down to, it's good to plan, right? It's good to have a plan. You put it on paper and this is the things that you want to get done. But it's also good to be fluid in trying to get those things done, right? Because maybe it's not going to happen in order. And maybe you got to jump to the end and get that thing done first thing and whatever it is, But if you have those things written down, and let's say you don't get everything done, at least you have a list to see it tomorrow, and you can start on the things that you didn't get done yesterday. Now, there'll come to a time, there were some days where I had 2 pages full of things that I get done today because those last 2 days were so crazy, right? Yeah. But if it's a Saturday, I know, what, my list is going to get longer. And the next off day that we have, I'm going to chop down that list. But also, it's a great time to maybe include some of your people, empower them to get some of these things done with them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not all on your shoulders, right? And
exactly.
Your people know that if they see you in the trenches with them, trying to take care of customers, doing observations when is appropriate, right? And making sure that you are doing those things to help them get through their day. I think they're going to be apt to wanting to help you get through your day as well when you have that long list of things to get done.
Oh yeah, big time. And guys, it's a team effort, right? You're a leader. You don't want to be a boss. You don't want to be a manager, right? You manage time and processes. You lead people. So those are very 2 big distinctions. And once you understand that, to your point, Joey, once you empower your people, it makes your life easier because you don't have to burden everything on yourself. You can spread that, and that burden actually becomes lower on you and then on the rest of the team, because you can start showing them how their efforts also impact the rest of the team, and you start making them feel better. And guys, people that see themselves with more responsibility and see themselves with potential for growth are more apt to want to stay because they see themselves growing with an organization.
Well, sounds like you're referencing leaders. It seems like leaders, right? So what would you rather have, a team of employees, or would you have a team of leaders, right? And we're not saying everybody's driving the ship, right? Because, there's only one person that can be steering the ship, right? Yep. But that doesn't mean that you can't have a whole bunch of people that have a strong mindset, that are empowered to maybe, if you got to go and do something at the back of the ship, that somebody's going to step up and know what to do and know the direction that we're going. You know what I mean?
Exactly. So cool. Well, Joey, I think on that note, we'll wrap it up for today. So definitely, like I said, guys, at the beginning, time management. I mean, this is a topic that we can go on for days on end. Like, there is so much to cover, and there is no right or wrong way to do this, right? But having something to start with to move forward will leave you that much better than the day before.
Yeah, I definitely agree, man. Like I said, the more you plan, the more you're going to find out that you don't do, but don't let it get to you. You know what I mean? Like, you use that to empower your people, to get them to want to do more, to want to do the things that you do as a leader on a daily basis, right? If y'all have any comments about that, please let us know about your experiences.
Yeah, share it, comment, message us. You guys know where we're at. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in.
All right, man. Later.
All right. Later, Joey.
And that brings us to the end of today's Obvious Leadership episode. Remember, every great leader starts with one step, and you're already on your way. Small changes lead to significant impact. Until next time, keep leading with purpose, and remember that leadership is the key to unlocking extraordinary results.